Dealers, need more used cars fast? With Kelley Blue Book Instant Cash Offer, you can connect directly with local sellers to win more inventory, improve look to book, and lower cost to market. That's the instant advantage. Request a demo today at b2b.kbb.com/ICO.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Monday, June 1st, 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, the UAW is on strike at a major parts supplier with this message: no contract, no axles. The U.S. wants to rewrite the rules for USMCA auto content, and Canada might not get a seat at the table. And Toyota pulls the plug on a flagship Lexus EV it was counting on to lead the electric push. Plus, Richard Ward from the American Vehicle Owners Alliance talks about who really owns the data your car generates and why it's turning into a billion-dollar fight in Washington.
We don't want to be subscriptioned to death on the data that we believe we already own.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. The UAW is striking against Dauch Corporation, formerly American Axle, and it's a direct threat to GM's best-selling pickups. Nearly 1,000 workers walked off the job at Dauch's Three Rivers, Michigan plant, which makes axles for the Silverado and Sierra. UAW President Shawn Fain announced the strike on a Facebook live stream, saying, quote, "No contract, no axles."
This committee at American Axle, these workers at American Axle, are some of the most badass members I've ever been associated with in this union. And what they've built here is a contract campaign that has shown the unity and the solidarity of the membership. And that unity and solidarity is what will carry us through.
GM says it's assessing the potential impact. The two sides have been negotiating since March after workers authorized the strike last month. The Trump administration is pushing to raise North American auto content requirements to 82% for vehicles to qualify for preferential USMCA treatment, with half the value needing to come specifically from the U.S. That's a significant jump from today's 75% regional content threshold. The proposal would also exclude Canadian parts content from the totals entirely. Industry officials say Canada could end up facing a take-it-or-leave-it deal after the U.S. and Mexico hash out the details. That's according to 4 people familiar with the U.S. negotiating position, first reported by Reuters. Toyota has canceled the Lexus LF ZC, the flagship electric sedan it was counting on to lead its push toward 1 million EVs a year. The company says it's pulling the plug due to market demand fluctuations and will redirect LF-ZC technologies to other projects. Toyota and Lexus sold fewer than 190,000 EVs last fiscal year, less than 2% of their global volume. It fits a broader pattern. Honda, Mazda, and Subaru have all recently canceled or delayed EV programs as well. And those are today's headlines. You can find more details on all those stories at autonews.com. BMW gave U.S. dealers a first look at more than a dozen new and redesigned models during a private meeting in Nashville last week. The lineup includes the iX3 EV arriving in September to take on Tesla's Model Y, plus bold redesigns for the X5 and X7. Dealers left bullish, calling BMW's product cadence incredible. Joining me now to talk about it is our own Urvash Kakaria, who broke the story for us at Automotive News. Urvash, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Thanks, Gil. It's becoming a bit of a habit here.
We love having you. Describe the products that dealers saw and their reactions.
So it was BMW's Big Americas meeting. I believe it happens every 2 to 3 years, and it was at Nashville's Music City Center. They had retailers from, both North America, Central, as well as South America, and dealers sort of got a preview of about more than a dozen. It's actually well over a dozen updated, new, and redesigned models that are coming to BMW, Mini, and Rolls-Royce showrooms over the next 24 to 36 months. The key vehicles that were of interest to retailers, because again, these are volume models, was the X5 and the X7. Both of those crossovers are getting redesigned. Interestingly, for those that follow this brand, the X5 will ditch its popular split gate tailgate,
wow.
and it'll just be one unit. So that's definitely going to get the attention of BMW watchers, who I believe really loved the split tailgate that the X5 had. The X5 is also appears to be looking a little more compact. Meanwhile, the X7 in its redesign is becoming more wagon-like, as one dealer said. Unlike a lot of these large SUVs that are boxy and have these curvy lines, the X7 is going to look a little distinct. And that's going to create a separation between the large crossover, the X7, and the midsize X5. It's going to create more of a separation between these two key models, according to dealers.
So, Urvash, what am I hearing about Alpina?
Yeah, this is very interesting, Kel. So BMW Group this year announced that they were going to spin off Alpina as its standalone brand, and it would sort of fit between the M brand and Rolls-Royce. Dealers said that essentially the Alpina models will get, in terms of performance, they will be close to the M line, not as powerful as the M brand vehicles. However, it would be significantly more refined and luxurious. Again, not Rolls-Royce level luxury, but a notch down. So this creates a separate brand identity for Alpina. Dealers at the meeting were also shown Alpina variants of the X7 and the 7 Series, so a sedan and a crossover. The dealers sort of described it as having distinctive grills, modified fascias, and significantly more luxurious interiors than their mainstream brands. And then one dealer also said, that these X7 and 7 Series version of Alpinas would be in the $200,000 to $350,000 range, and that they would sort of be built for speed, not sport. So that kind of gives you a general idea of the direction that BMW Group is going with Alpina.
Wow. Now, you write that the iX3 addresses BMW's EV shortfalls. What's the hope for that model?
Yeah, so the iX3 is a key model for BMW because it competes in the critical, compact crossover EV segment dominated by the Tesla Model Y, which I believe is still the most popular EV on the market. So there's definitely a lot of market share for BMW to capture with this iX3. The iX3 will also debut BMW's new Neue Klasse platform, which essentially is not EV only, it's more EV first. That Neue Klasse designs and technology will also spread to the hybrids in the lineup. But they, of course, have much more cost efficient and energy efficient batteries, more powerful motors. So the iX3 will be a key test for BMW's all-new platform.
Perfect. Urvash, I like talking to you because you always got the good stuff for me. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Kel.
Coming up, a fight is brewing on Capitol Hill over who should own the data that personal vehicles generate. We'll hear more about that next on Daily Drive.
Dealers, need more used cars fast? You're not alone. And waiting for inventory to show up isn't much of a strategy. That's where Kelley Blue Book Instant Cash Offer comes in. Backed by Kelley Blue Book's 100 years of trusted valuation expertise, Instant Cash Offer connects you directly with local sellers so you can win more inventory right when you need it. And because the experience is transparent and consistent from the first click, it helps build trust early, before a customer ever walks through your doors. That trust matters. It sets expectations up front, reducing friction in the appraisal process. What that means for your team is more control over how inventory comes onto your lot and more time focused on selling cars, not chasing them. It's a smarter way to source inventory in today's competitive market, and that's the instant advantage. If you're ready to connect with local sellers, win more inventory opportunities, and lower cost to market with an approach dealers rely on, check out Kelley Blue Book Instant Cash Offer. Request a demo today at b2b.kbb.com/ICO.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. Vehicle data is increasingly valuable, and automakers have been quietly profiting from it. But a growing coalition of fleet operators, rental car companies, insurance firms, and consumer groups says the data belongs to vehicle owners, not the OEMs. Richard Ward is the executive director of the American Vehicle Owners Alliance, a coalition pushing Congress to change the rules. He joined our own Molly Boygon on the Shift podcast to talk about the legislative battle taking shape in Washington, including two competing bills, who's fighting for what, and what it means for the future of car ownership. Here's a piece of that conversation.
So for those who aren't familiar, can you explain what the AVOA is and who your members are made up of?
Absolutely. We are a coalition made up primarily of fleet operators, rental car companies, insurance companies, a few companies like a Safelite that depend on vehicle data for the equipment and parts that they manufacture. We work across all those industries to bring together around a very simple first principle of if it's the car you own or purchased or leased, that data that the car is generating is yours. And so we often say, my car, my data. And it's something that has gained a lot of traction across the industry, across consumer groups that are also members, across public fleet managers that operate their city or county fleets, including first responders. And we really come together to advocate to Congress and to the administration that when you purchase a vehicle, the data that comes along with it when you generate that data is in fact the owner's. Right now, that's not the case. There's a number of different debates going on around what some of the rules should look like and whether they should be included in upcoming surface transportation legislation at all.
So before we get into the legislation that's on the table, can you just say a little bit more about the status quo? Like, what happens when a vehicle changes hands and what happens with the data?
Currently, the data with respect to the status quo is completely owned and controlled by the OEMs, the car manufacturers. And when you purchase a vehicle, if you're an individual consumer, they maybe offer you a subscription for certain features. If you're like a fleet operator or a rental car company and you're buying a large quantity of cars, you're actually negotiating with the OEM for the data and are being charged for it. So they're actually charging you for data, the raw data that is actually you're generating. And so there's kind of two buckets here. OEMs do produce a lot of fantastic products that is derived from the vehicle data and is often sold, whether to repair shops, dealers, fleet owners. And that's one thing that certainly all of AVOA's members, they're willing to pay for. But that raw generated data, given how connected vehicles have become and where they're going, that data has really become the lifeline for how they operate. And the other concern is if the OEMs own and control all the data, they're very worried about sort of over the horizon issues around potential gatekeeping of that data. They may be willing to sell that data to their customers today, but we've certainly seen examples where OEMs have entertained getting into insurance or renting cars. And now you are really sort of threatening that competitive market if you control all the data. If ownership becomes a condition for the data, then do you truly own the vehicle?
In the case of rental car companies, are they paying to access the data that the vehicle is generating once it's already in their purview, basically?
Correct.
Okay.
Again, if the OEM takes that data and puts together a product, the customer can decide if they would like to purchase that product or not, and many of our members do. But the idea that the data that you're generating from the vehicle that you already own is not yours and you don't have access to it or control of it. A lot of members of Congress have sort of started to focus on this issue because there was an OEM story where they were selling this data to third-party brokers who were then selling it to insurance companies, and customers had no idea why their auto insurance rates were going up. And so one of the reasons why insurance is so active in our coalition is because they want to make sure that the individual owner of that vehicle is the one providing the consent now to insurance companies to share that data. And in return, they can get additional bonuses or reduced rates for good driving and those types of things. But they want to put the customer back in the middle, the owner of the vehicle back in the middle of that decision. And so leaving it all in the hands of the OEMs, what we're unfortunately seeing is they're now more openly talking about how much money this is going to bring into their companies. We're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars on subscriptions. And that's all on the back of the vehicle owner. We don't want to be subscriptioned to death on the data that we believe we already own. And so it's a real challenge right now, and it's only going to get more difficult as these cars produce more and more data.
Let's talk a little bit more about the conversation that's happening in Washington. So my sense is that there are kind of dueling bills on the table, one that's representing AVOA's interest and one that's representing the interests of the OEM. So is that correct, first of all? And can you just talk a little bit about what these different bills are trying to do?
I would sort of break it down into two groups, and the OEMs are generally opposed in both. The issue around what we're working on with respect to the Driver Act, we have a full backing of our coalition, and that really talks about access to 100% of the vehicle generated data. The other area is what I would call the Repair Act, which is looking at a small subset of vehicle generated data and the ability to be able to share that data with independent repair shops, because they are struggling to fix these cars that are now basically computers on wheels, and the dealers have a much greater advantage. But the problem is the dealers aren't everywhere, and independent repair shops are throughout the country, and people who own vehicles within proximity to independent repair shops would like to take their vehicles to those shops and not have to pay to have their cars towed sometimes hundreds of miles away to a dealer to fix it. And the Repair Act issue has been around for many years. We've seen the Repair Act introduced in several Congresses, and that is currently on the table right as we speak in terms of the Surface Transportation Bill. The Driver Act is relatively new. Again, it represents 100% of the data, where we think repair is somewhere in the 20% of the range. And so if you were to just act on repair, you're not going to be including about 80% of that transportation mobility fleet ecosystem. And so there's been a lot of resistance from the OEMs, again, because this will significantly eat into their revenue. We know OEMs have had issues in the past. They've needed government bailouts. They've made difficult choices and have lost money on EVs. And now all of a sudden they've come across how, this data is sort of the new oil, and they see a real opportunity to pad their pockets and sort of right their ships. But they're doing it on the backs of their customers, and we don't think that's right. To your question, the OEMs have worked sort of an MOU around what's called the safe repair. And there's been some fits and starts about trying to get legislation around that. But we mostly view that as their effort to try to at least demonstrate that they could be for something. But the legislation has never really materialized. I think what we'll see is they'll be working more off the repair bill and trying to find consensus with stakeholders there. I think Driver Act has a real opportunity. I don't know if we'll see it this year, but we are going to continue to fight for it. And if we have to work to expand Repair Act to include all data, that's what we'll look to do.
Richard Ward spoke with our own Molly Boygan. You can hear the full conversation, including an update on the legislation in Congress, on the latest episode of Shift, available now wherever you get your podcasts. That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer, as well as our own Urvash Kakaria and Hans Greimel. We also had reporting from Kurt Nagel of our sibling publication, Crane's Detroit Business. You can get the latest news on vehicle data legislation, USMCA trade negotiations, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back tomorrow for a conversation about the possible scenarios and outcomes of the upcoming USMCA talks. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.